Hello and welcome to this lesson on recording data, identifying anomalies and plotting graphs. My name is Edgar Van Hook and I'm the Director of Science at Midhurst Roller College, where I'm one of the physics teachers. In this lesson we will try to develop our understanding and skills of these seemingly basic techniques, but ensure you can use the techniques to the highest standard. You'll need to have handy lined paper and graph paper, pen and pencil and a ruler, as well as a scientific calculator if needed for calculations. Throughout this video you can of course pause and rewind at any time, though at specific times I will ask you to pause the video and complete a task. Please make sure that you do, as this will significantly aid your learning and result in a good use of your time. So to start this lesson I would expect you to know how to identify the independent and dependent variable from a hypothesis, how to plot a point on a graph. I'd expect you to know that each unit should have a measurement attached to it, and also how to identify anomalies or outliers in a set of data. If you're unsure about any of these points, particularly the first point, I'd recommend you review the preceding lesson before continuing. So before we start the lesson proper, what I'd like you to do is to take a look at the example data table on this page and also the graph that follows this. And I'd like you to identify as many mistakes as you can here in the data table and also in the graph. Pause the video and take a note of the errors here, and then restart the video to see the graph, and pause to take a note of the errors there and restart the video of course when you're ready. You're looking overall for at least 10 errors in total across the graph and table. At least 10 errors. You may find more. So here are the errors, here are the mistakes in the table. 8 different mistakes here. Take a look through and see how many of those did you get. Hopefully you've got a good few of those already. You've recognized those. And here are the mistakes that there are on the graph. 6 mistakes here. So let's take a look at the standard for recording data in a table. The first thing is, of course, as you've been told for many years, I'm sure, draw tables with a pencil and ruler. It looks much neater, but of course the key thing with using a pencil is if you need to adjust your table, if you need to move a column or so on, it's easier to do that because you can, of course, rub out the lines. The standard convention is always to make sure that the independent variable is in the left-hand column with the dependent variable to the right, and that's why it's important to be able to identify what is the independent and dependent variable from the hypothesis. That was covered in the preceding lesson. You can, of course, add extra columns to the right as needed. Here we've got additional columns for the first, second and third attempts at recording the time and also the mean value. Units should not be recorded alongside numbers, rather units should be recorded in headings, including any SI prefixes or the standard form exponential where relevant. If it's possible to record a 0 point, possible or practical, it's always worth recording that to ensure that at the 0 value of the independent variable you know what the dependent variable is. That can then be useful later on when drawing graphs. We should always line up our values with the decimal point and essentially organize the values, the data recorded in our table, in columns of tens, units, tenths and hundredths. It makes it far easier to look through data for patterns, look through your data for anomalies, and indeed to be able to spot when you may have incorrectly recorded any data. We should always record results in the order of an increasing independent variable. Again, this helps us to be able to spot patterns, identify trends that we might see in the data, and areas where we might need to go back perhaps and take further measurements. I also always recommend that students make notes alongside the data table. So, for instance, if at a particular point there was an issue with the equipment, to make a note of that alongside, which may be relevant in terms of interpreting that data later on. At the top of the table, it's always worth stating what the hypothesis is, if that is perhaps not already stated clearly somewhere else. And lastly, it's really important to record results in pen and then cross out mistakes. Data tables should show what happened in your experiment, not what you wish to have happened in your experiment. They should be a true and accurate account, warts and all. A good lab book has all of the mistakes as well as all of the successes, because good science involves learning from mistakes or recognizing mistakes and rectifying them in some way. So what I'd like you to do is pause the video now, and you can take a note of those key standards. I would recommend putting these somewhere that you can easily refer to, for instance, the front of your lab book. So let's move on to this section and look at anomalies. Take a look at the results in the table and see if you can spot the anomalies in the data. Anomalies are sometimes called outliers, and the AQA exam board refers to anomalies, but the working definition for anomalies is really the definition of outliers, and that is an observation that is well outside of the expected range of values in a study or experiment, and which is often discarded from the data set. Spotting anomalies is usually not too tricky, particularly when we have repeated measurements a number of times, such as we've got here. What can be a problem is knowing when we should be looking for anomalies. So I would imagine that in all of these you picked out the 45 as the anomaly, and kind of once you've done the first one, the others are easy because I just copied the numbers across. However, let's look again at the definition for an anomaly. The key word I want to draw your attention to is expected. Sometimes we expect there to be a fairly tight range of values, and at other times we might expect there to be any value at all. If the measurement we're taking is based on an essentially random process, then we should not expect an anomaly, or indeed we should be able to expect any value. So therefore, in that first set of data for background radiation count, the 45 is not an anomaly. We shouldn't discard that value from the data set, as radiation is a random process. For the temperature reading, the 45 should be considered as an anomaly, as we'd expect the temperature reading on the beach, on the same beach at the same time, to be roughly about the same. Lastly, the height of the beam plant, well, that may or may not be an anomaly, and we'd need to know more about the experiment and the expected results. But given the wide amount of variation we can see within the natural world, typically we would not consider that to be an anomaly, and therefore we would include that within the data set when we do further processing. So here are a selection of measurements that you may take during your A-level physics course, and I've added in a couple also from chemistry that hopefully you can come up with an idea for. What I'd like you to do is just decide which of these would be worth identifying anomalies, looking for anomalies, and which of them you wouldn't. Remember that the definition includes expected. So identify where you would expect to find or where you shouldn't see values well beyond a range, and if you do, you discard those because those then would be the anomalies. Pause the video to do this task and then start to continue when you're ready. So finally, let's move on to our standards for graphing. And after this, I'll present you with some data and ask you to graph it to this standard. So let's take a look. First of all, the size of a graph. We need to make our graphs as large as possible on the page to fill as much of an A4 page as possible. The reason for doing this is that large graphs lead to a higher resolution in measurements that we use to determine the gradient, and in measurements of the y-intercept. With a small graph, we're not able to be precise enough in those measurements. Next, we need to consider the scales. Irregular scales, such as scales that use a multiple of 3, 6, 7 or 9, try to avoid 4 and 8, but those irregular scales, first of all, they're quite difficult to plot points onto those, as the subdivisions within major units of the axis become quite awkward multiples that often involve recurring decimals. So we want to avoid scales that go up in multiples of 3, 6, 7 and 9. Reading such scales then also becomes very difficult and therefore has the risk of introducing errors in reading or just simply uncertainties that are not needed. So always use multiples of 1, 2 and 5, or 0.5, 0.2, 0.1 to go up on the major lines, the per centimetre line. Also, typically try to avoid a false axis. Always start each scale with 0 on the origin, where the x and y axis cross, because very often we're looking for the y-intercept, sometimes, rarely, but sometimes we look for the x-intercept. And if you use a false axis, it may be that when you extend your line of best fit to the axis, you either cross at a point where you are in that false axis point, or you're unable to properly determine what the value is. Lines of best fit. So these should always conform to what we would expect the relationship to be as stated by the hypothesis. However, it doesn't mean that we should force a line of best fit through 0 unless we have taken a 0, 0 measurement where a 0 value for the independent variable leads to a 0 value for the dependent variable. If a line of best fit can be justified to not pass through the origin, but rather have a positive or negative y-intercept, that may reveal either a systematic error in the measurements or some other factor, such as maybe friction in a pulley or something, or the resistance of wires that wasn't accounted for during the experiment. Axis labels should be of the form variable / unit without brackets. That's what we should always do, and it should also include any relevant exponential, standard form exponential, if our data is expressed in standard form. This last point is also something you should be aware of when reading data from a graph. You must take this into account, otherwise your calculated gradient, for example, may be out by several orders of magnitude. Many years ago, a mistake like this once put an end to a researcher's promising proposal to harness wave power around the Scottish coast. Apparently, a government civil servant didn't see the exponential, standard form exponential on a graph axis that the researcher had produced, and therefore estimated the power output at only 1/1000th of the actual value, and thus deemed the project uneconomical to develop. Those calculations were reviewed some time later, and it was deemed that it would have been incredibly economical, and so there was a wasted opportunity there. And the last thing to say is that points should be plotted as a plus, vertical and horizontal lines, rather than what most students typically do, which is draw a cross, like a multiplication. So let me show you the advantage of plotting a point using a plus and not an X. So many students, when plotting graphs, really don't like that, and apart from determining what the most appropriate scale is, they also find plotting points to be quite difficult. It requires a lot of concentration and a lot of focus, because when using an X, you have to have in mind the exact location you're going to put those points in order to do an X marks the spot type mark. The missing data points from the data I presented earlier was 4.5 volts and 2.55 amps. So first of all, I'm going to work out where 4.5 volts seems to be somewhere up here. So I work my way up here, and then I need to go across and look for 2.5 amps, which is, oh, hold on, I've got to go 2. That'll be this line. So where? Oh, hold on, back to here, and I have to keep going backwards and forwards, and you will be familiar with this experience. I exaggerate it a little bit here, but it's essentially going to be somewhere about here. And we have to imagine where a vertical line and a horizontal line cross, and then we need to draw our cross in that correct position. And well, it's not bad, but it doesn't stand up to the scrutiny that this next method shows. So here's the way that I would recommend you are always drawing your points, and actually the benefit of this is, well, we'll see it in later lessons when we start looking at error bars. With a plus, what we do is we firstly plot the horizontal value. So we need to plot one at 6 volts and 2.95 amps. So I find my 6 volts here on the x-axis, and I'm going to lay my ruler on the graph paper. I know that I've got to go to 2.95, so that's somewhere about here, and I just need a about at the moment. So I can draw a nice line there, and then I need to look for 2.95 amps. So here I go back to the y-axis. I've got here 2.95, so I lay across my ruler, and then I can draw a horizontal line at just the right point there. Now, this is then fairly straightforward. If we've done our lines with an HB pencil, what we can do is we can shorten them a little bit to show where the error bars would be, and that's something we're going to make a little bit more of a use of in a couple of lessons time. So that's how I recommend that you are drawing points. You draw them as pluses rather than crosses, because this is a very positive way of doing it, whereas that one is wrong. So to conclude the lesson, what I would like you to do is to have a go at creating, first of all, a good results table and a good graph. We've got some example data here from an experiment to determine the internal resistance of a cell, with a hypothesis that the terminal voltage of a cell will decrease as the current within a circuit is increased. So two pieces of work need to be done here. First of all, take this data here and put it into a proper results table where all the data has been properly recorded according to the standards I set out earlier on, and then also draw a graph to a high standard. Make sure you keep those because we're going to need that graph particularly in the next lesson. Pause the video now, and when you are done, you are finished.